So the question is, how do we manage the transition? And I want to make 3 comments, one about the personal, one about the economic, and one about the political. On the personal, you could be asking, how are you personally going to manage the transition? How are you going to manage your life? How are you going to deal with the challenges of artificial intelligence? How are your children going to manage it? Now, let's be blunt. You're probably better equipped than many people to do it. There is a diversity of people in this room, but on the whole, they will be towards the more educated end of the spectrum, the somewhat higher income level at the end of the spectrum, the more advantaged end of the spectrum. And I think, broadly speaking, that end of the spectrum should realize that there is a lot about this world which is very good for us, and in some ways getting better for us, and not so good for some people who are not here. And so what we have to do is to be aware of some of the things that Rufus has talked about the fact that capitalism is not working for everybody, and to engage in those issues as citizens and as participants in the public space, while also finding the advantages which can flow to us. Those advantages, to me, there's one point that Alan Finkel made in his speech yesterday, which struck me. I think we have to personally do 2 things. Love information and communication technology, love the technology, understand it, understand what it can do, use it in your life, and every now and then switch it off. Because if you don't switch it off, you will not give yourself time to truly think, to truly engage with other people. And one of the big things that I see about people who use IT all the time is they do seem to have become slaves to it rather than masters of it. So my only advice on the personal side is switch these damn machines off every now and then and go for a walk in the countryside, hold the hand of your children, read a book, classic old-fashioned paper-printed book. I think that is incredibly important. But if I turn to the public policy issues, let me first of all talk about the economy. So I talked yesterday about how I think we are going to see waves of automation which will threaten the jobs, but more significantly, the real wages of many people. They will boost the real wages of particular elites, those who have very high skills in information communication technology, those who can create these extraordinary network externalities from which they gain enormous economic rents, those who have the capability to create subjective brands and designs which get paid, they will do very well. And other people, there is a huge threat of a technological displacement of jobs, which at one level is fantastic. I mean, if throughout human history up till 300 years ago, you'd have said, here is a future where you don't have to work, they'd have thought you're describing nirvana, but is hugely challenging in terms of real wages. What do we do about that? The first point, I think, is more purely economic, and it is, as I said yesterday, that I do think we have to think about the distribution of income and the distribution of wealth. I think in this environment of extraordinary winner-take-all economics, high incomes and rising incomes at the top end of the income distribution, we have to create a political space for progressive taxation, for distribution. We have to recognize, as I said yesterday, that Karl Marx was partially right, that in a sense the capitalist system left to itself will produce accumulating inequality because the richer people have the capacity to save more than the poorer people, and because they save, they accumulate more and more. That's the very essence of that understanding. And unless we are doing what we did throughout the 20th century and leaning against that, not trying entirely to undo it, because we can't do that, but leaning against it with the power of welfare states and progressive taxation, we will find this thing spinning out of control. But the second thing we need to do, and it is what Rufus said, and I could not have agreed more with what he said, is we need to understand the importance of economic geography. Economists as a profession often completely ignore the details of local specificity. They try to develop models in which there is capital K, labor L, units of companies, and these are manipulated on their pages and in their algebra as if they were completely detached from specific locations. But what is, I think, intriguing is that in the distanceless world of information and communications technology, urban agglomerations, distance matters a huge amount. What is extraordinary is that in this world of supposed ability to telecommute from everywhere, we are seeing these extraordinarily strong agglomeration effects where talented people cluster together in particular valleys, in particular cities, in self-reinforcing cycles of innovation and income and rising property prices, which then mean that nobody else can move there. And I think Rufus is absolutely right that we need to try and work out how do we make many cities, many towns flourish. What is it about transport links? What is it about localism that means that we do not end up with a flourishing centre and a decaying periphery? In the UK, if you want to understand why the UK voted for Brexit, look at a whole load of medium-sized towns along the coast which are full of bread and breakfast houses, which 30 years ago, British tourists used to go there to have a beach holiday. They now all go to Spain and Italy. They don't go there. And these are very sad places. They are left behind places. In France, it's been calculated that if you want to understand the vote for Marine Le Pen, it is almost entirely correlated to how far the town is. Her percentage of vote is correlated with how far the town is from a mainline railway station. The further it is from a mainline railway station, the higher the vote for the National Front. These specificities of place, I think, are hugely important. We are becoming more unequal, not only by income group, but hugely important by geography. But the third thing on managing the economic transformation is to realize that we have problems not just of income and wealth, but also of meaning, of value, of in an environment where we don't need to work because we have we're clever enough to automate things. How does work still give people value, or what do people get value from? People have always had to work throughout history, and they find that something where they create something which they feel valuable. John Maynard Keynes put it very well back about 80 years ago, 1929, if I remember rightly, so 90 years ago now. He wrote an article called Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren. And if you've never read that essay, I would read it. It is so foresightful. And it basically says, we will at some stage in the future automate away all work. And at one level, this will be amazing. This will be coming true, what human beings have dreamed about for years, that they don't have to work. But he said this is going to be quite problematic. The phrase he used, if I can try and get it from memory, is then for the first time since his creation, and you'll have to apologize the gender specificity of what he said. It was that time, so let me use the words as it was. Then for the first time since his creation, man will face his real, his lasting, his permanent challenge. How to use well the hours of leisure which science and compound interest has given him. How to live agreeably and wisely and well. And that actually is quite a challenge. And if I had to say one thing about a challenge, and I'll come back to this in a minute, I think education is very important. I am worried that we have allowed our education of school children and of university students to become narrowly utilitarian. That we think the aim of education is to give the people the skills which will increase the national productivity rate. And that if a university can't prove that its professors are delivering something that increases the national productivity rate, then we better cut its budget because it isn't doing its job. I think the most important things that we need to educate people do is to live wisely and agreeably and well. And I think, therefore, that in schools we should teach people, yes, of course, the core skills of literacy and numeracy that enable them to deal with the world, but we should value art for its own sakes, for excellence in art. Music, we should try and convince people that they want music and art to fill their life, even if they are not going to earn money from it. We should want as many people as possible not to be doing what they're doing at the moment, which is watching sport or watching cookery programs, but cooking and playing sport themselves. We have to have an idea of how we create education for life. Finally, politics. I hugely enjoyed Rufus's comments now, and I hugely enjoyed Kim's comments last night. It seems to me that we have a really quite fundamental problem about the decay of our citizens' discussions as citizens and our politicians' discussions as parliamentarians, and that the quality and our ability to have serious debates about long-term issues is decaying. Why is it decaying? I think it is decaying partly because of technology. Technology is creating two things. For citizens, it is creating the danger of the echo chamber. That each of us, to a far greater extent than used to be in the past, can choose to listen to or watch that television program which presents the views that we agreed with in the first place. Broadly speaking, America now has a whole load of people who watch Fox TV, which reinforce their existing beliefs, and a whole load of other people who watch MSNBC, which reinforces their beliefs. Gillian Tett of the FT told me about 4 years ago, she said, Adair, we must all get out of your echo chambers, so you must deliberately listen to things that you disagree with. So every time I go to America now and I'm in a hotel room, I only watch Fox TV. But this was quite insightful because I knew that Trump was going to win. I knew it about 4 weeks before because I'd been watching Fox TV and I'd been realizing how incredibly effective the repetitive echo chambers of Fox TV were going to be in reinforcing the base of Trump's support. Echo chambers are, I think, a very major problem. And I think for politicians, the huge problem is the 24-hour news cycle. When you think about the life, if you read the biography of Winston Churchill, thinking through how he was going to address a political issue, you will find him reading back books of philosophy, spending 2 days to think about a particular problem, spending a couple of hours crafting a well thought out intellectual point of view. And now we have politicians with their special advisor next to them saying, this tweet has come out, we've got to get our tweet out within a minute or otherwise we'll have lost the opportunity. This is a very, very major challenge to the quality of our debate, and so too is fake news. And again, Alan Finkel showed that extraordinary picture of the fake Barack Obama, and that's the current technology. Just think about how incredibly lifelike it's going to be in 20 years' time. So what do we do about that? Well, there are many things, but I just have one thought, and again, it's education. I think one of the most important things we have to educate children to be, school children to be, is good and effective citizens. I think we should be deliberately educating them into the fact that when they use social media, they are being manipulated. That whole visual environment into which they have gone is trying to encourage them to buy this or to buy that point of view. They need to understand how search engine algorithms are continually putting things to the top to the benefit of that search engine. We need to educate them into the world in which they live. We need to educate them that fake news is a real danger, and we need to make clear that they will be told things by apparently authoritative news channels which are untrue, and we need to help them as best possible to understand that. And we need to help them to value debate by the debates that we have when they are old enough to do it within the school environment, to value fact-based debates, to value, as Kim said last night, respect for the other side, respect for the majority when it is the majority, but respect for the other side. And I think that is probably the single most important thing to do to offset what is otherwise the quite dangerous impact of technology on our democracy. Thank you very much.